Hiya! Welcome! I'm shooting this video the day after I've come back from London to see In Strict Confidence in concert for the first time. And this video will be published, I think, a week after I left for London to see them. Thank you for joining me for this. It's kind of like a sort of, not quite a vlog, but my reflections on the last couple of days and my first solo trip to London, which I'll touch upon at some point in the video. So yeah, I went to see In Strict Confidence, the German industrial electro band, or technically a duo, but I'll get into that later on as well, at a venue called 229 in London. It's called 229 because their address is 229 Great Portland Street. They were actually the support act, or as it turned out, one of two support acts to the main act, a long-running Italian dark wave / synth group called, and now I apologise if there's any fans of them and I'm mispronouncing their name, but it's either Curlian Camera or Curlion Camera. I didn't go for them. I'll talk a little bit about what I saw of Curlion Camera later on. But the day started, I'll skip all the usual Friday morning ablutions and just say that I got into Chesterfield, my hometown, in plenty of time, so I was able to go in my local record shop, and I didn't pick anything up. That's Tallbird Records, by the way, run by the lovely Maria, who I did have a nice chat with. She's looking for a certain soundtrack album for me that I've not been able to pick up yet. And I was also asking her if she ever got much Bangra music in the shop. But it was great to get in Tallbird Records again. It's been ages since I've been in there, and she's very friendly and helpful, Maria. So big recommendation, if you're ever in Chesterfield, go to Tallbird Records because they've got a brilliant choice. I nearly bought some stuff. I'm kind of glad I didn't, especially given what I spent in London. I've got to get back to Tallbird more often. They do have a website, but I will say their website's not great, and if you really want to see what they've got, and they've got a lot, both new and second-hand vinyl, and they've also got plenty of CDs and 7-inch singles and stuff like that, then you really need to be there in person. So I had my lunch after that, and that led me up nicely to the coach arriving at the coach station, due at 1:25. It was a little bit late, and then they were a little bit later still, because one of the travellers down to London was a wheelchair user, so they had to get him on safely, fold the wheelchair up and make sure that was in the luggage section safely. Decent journey down. I've demonstrated that with a few shots of anonymous M1 motorway footage in time-lapse mode, and also shot a bit of London, but probably not the interesting bit, and it was dark by then anyway. It was about after 4:30 in the afternoon when I shot that. But decent journey that took about as long as I expected, maybe slightly longer, because the driver did give us a 10-minute break at Watford Gap services, I think it was. I think he only really did that because he wanted to go to the toilet and then go outside for a vape. So, but it was handy for all the smokers and vapors on the coach who wanted to get off for 10 minutes. So that didn't really delay us by, well, any longer than 10-15 minutes really. So got into London Victoria Station at probably about 5:20, which wasn't bad. The journey was like well under 4 hours really, and without the stops I think it would have been closer to 3.5, to be honest, which is what I expected really. I booked my seats, which is something that I don't know if I got the option to do it or if I just forgot when me and my mate Dan went down to London to see AEW wrestling at Wembley Stadium back in August, and it was a bank holiday weekend, and it was packed, and yeah, there was spare seats, but we couldn't sit with each other on the way there or on the way back. Well, we did kind of sit next to each other on the way there, because I was on one aisle seat and then he was on another aisle seat just across. But anyway, that was back then. I booked my seats right at the front. For someone who is very tall as well as being wide, I don't think there's actually a comfortable seating position for me on the entire coach. Maybe that one at the very back that leads out to the aisle, but I didn't really want to sit there because I'd probably feel a bit claustrophobic if people were sitting either side of me. but it was fine. You know, it was probably still the best seat you could get that wasn't the wheelchair access seat, and obviously on the way coming there was someone availing of that. There was no one sat next to me, but my one was reserved, so I was able to kind of stretch out, put my bag on the seat next to me. So that was all fine. Nice and straightforward. Off the coach, after a quick toilet break, I just made my way to where it was pointing towards taxis. Then as soon as you got out the door, line of London black cabs. I just went to the first one, the one that looked like it was at the front of a queue, and I said, "Are you available?" "Yeah, Holiday Inn, Regent's Park, please." 20 minutes-ish later, maybe a little longer, but it's driving through like the West End and where all the shoppers and tourists are. So he had kept, you know, putting his brakes on and slowing down, and I think the speed limit in London's only 20 miles an hour in the city centre now anyway. So my good friend Lee, aka Leroy Screwballs on YouTube, I don't think he'll be making any content about this particular gig or his experiences, but nonetheless, please go and check his channel out. He puts a lot of good stuff out there, and give him a sub. I'll leave his link at the top of the description, of course. But he was there waiting for me. He'd driven to the hotel from Kent, and he'd parked in the underground car park. I booked all that for him prior. Met up with him in the bar area where he was just finishing a coffee, probably about 10 to 5 to 6 in the evening, so I'd made good time. You know, I was kind of saying to him in the weeks and days leading up to it, I was saying, I think, you know, if I can get to the hotel by 6 o'clock, then I'm, you know, making good time, and there's been no delays. And I think it was more or less 5 to 6 or thereabouts when I actually got there, and I checked in, of course, before I met Lee. Got our room key, not key card. We had a chat for a little bit and then went to our room. Now, I'm not one for sharing rooms, particularly in hotels, but if it's just one night and, you know, the company I'm keeping, you know, I know them, I trust them. You know, I've got, you know, space issues and things like that, and anxiety and all the rest of it, and my Asperger's syndrome means I'm a little bit sort of pernickety, and, you know, I've probably got some strange habits that me myself I don't notice, but other people might. But for one night at a Holiday Inn, Regent's Park, you know, I knew it'd be fine to share with Lee and a twin. It was funny because the receptionist said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're full tonight, and I can't upgrade you to a double." I'm like, no, I want a twin. I'm not here with my boyfriend. Leroy and I did have a good chuckle about that when I told him. But really nice room and a really nice hotel. I mean, it's the West End of London. It's like tourism central, but it's on a nice sort of reasonably quiet side street. At night you don't get an awful amount of traffic noises, you know, people hollering and all the rest of it. It's pretty peaceful, really, which surprised me. And plus, you know, once you close the window, it's like everything's a bit more soundproofed anyway, and I think there was some air conditioning on, and it being pretty much winter now, we didn't necessarily want the window open all night anyway. Nice hotel, really can't fault them at all. Friendly staff. The price of it, yeah, it's probably about sort of standard price as what you'd pay for any half decent London hotel, really, that's, you know, right close to a lot of the touristy stuff. I mean, particularly in the taxi on the way to the hotel, and then also on the way back to the station the following day. You know, saw all the kind of what I'd call the monopoly streets, you know, your Mayfairs, Park Lanes, Oxford Street, etc, etc. For a tourist point of view would be typical London, really. And I think this Holiday Inn, which is classed as the Regent's Park Hotel, because Regent's Park is just somewhere a bit further out than where we got to. There'll no doubt be loads of tourists, not just gig goers who maybe seen a gig at some nearby venue, or even some venue on different parts of London, because London is absolutely massive. It was expensive, but it was good in the fact that it didn't cost me any extra, apart from one extra breakfast, to, you know, get a room with Lee. If I'd gone on my own, the room would have cost the same. I would have, you know, got probably a double room to myself or whatever, but, you know, it didn't cost any extra to have another guest, which I think is good, because not all hotel companies do that. You sort of pay per guest rather than per night. With Holiday Inn, or that one at least, it was per night. So pleased about that. I made a cup of tea in the room, and we just chatted and decided we'd go for a drink. It was getting on towards 7:15 at this point, and the venue, the 229, opened at 7, but I think it was just like a DJ playing stuff till 8, and then the first act, who only got added to the bill at very short notice because their gig elsewhere in London had to be cancelled from 2 nights ago. They're called Palindrones, and I've not had a chance to check them out, so I can't say whether I think they're any good or not, and we didn't see them either, because I wasn't bothered about seeing them, and I wasn't bothered about seeing Curly and Camera particularly either. So they would have started at 8 and had a 45-minute set, or possibly even a bit of a shorter one actually. And me and Lee went to, I think it was a pub called the Green Man, which was just up from the hotel and then literally across the street from the venue. I loved this part of London and where we were because everything was just so close together. The hotel, the pub, the restaurant that we'd go into later on, the 229 venue. It was just all there, right together pretty much. And we went in this pub that was a little bit loud, but you know, we could still have a half decent conversation. And they had the England game on big screens as well. So we had a couple of drinks in there. And then by that point, it was getting on for 9:15, which is when I insisted that we had to be, you know, in the venue. So all we had to do was just literally dash across the street, and then we're in the 229 club. We got there exactly right on time for them setting up in strict confidence. This was my first gig that I'd been to, I think, since, I want to say, possibly around 2017, I think, something like that, when I would have seen Peter Hook and the Light in Cardiff for the second time. So it's been a long time since I've been to a gig, and as you've probably gathered, this was the first time ever I'd ever travelled down to London on my own. And that's something, as I can still vividly remember myself saying it at one point, like, you know, probably only 6 months ago or less, I was saying, no, I'd never go down to London on my own, not a chance, and yet I did it. Because I was just desperate to see in Street Confidence. I've talked about ISC a lot on this channel, as you know, and I'm sure there's people who are kind of getting bored with me mentioning them, but I love them, even though I've not been listening to them sort of full on for much more than about 6 months, really. Once I decided I was going to get more into them, you know, it was one of the best decisions I've made music-wise ever, really. And I've now got all their albums, and as soon as I saw that they were doing one gig, only one in the whole of the country, and it was in London, I thought, well, what if this might be my last chance to see them for whatever reason, or if they don't come back to the UK for years. And if they do come to the UK, it might be somewhere that's a little more difficult to get to, possibly, although, I don't know, they probably only play London, really, because they're a cult act. They're not a big act who would do a full-on tour in this country, I don't think, but I don't know. It'd be brilliant if they did, but anyway. They played a set that lasted, I think, about an hour and 10 minutes. It was probably the longest set, by my calculations, of the 3 acts, the 3 bands that were on. And it was, yeah, it was like a greatest hits set. I'm putting some pictures up now. Some of them have been taken by me, well, a couple, and the rest taken by Lee, who kindly donated his photos and video footage. We didn't take much because I'm not one of these who has to have the phone out all the time during a concert or an event. You know, I want to enjoy it, I want to immerse myself, and I think I did that. Particularly when one of my favourite tracks, Set Me Free, was playing, because I wasn't expecting them to play that, and I just went absolutely mental. I kind of lost myself, really, fully when that came on. It was a nice scene and a good crowd, you know. It was good for me. My claustrophobia wasn't triggered because it wasn't like crammed and we're in there like sardines, you know. There's plenty of space to sort of move in and out and go to the bar or the toilets and back, and you know, we could get right up to the stage. No barriers or restrictions or anything like that. Fantastic. And the 2 guys, ISC, performed a brilliant set. Loud. My right ear, not my left ear for some reason, but my right ear was still ringing the following morning, but it did subside soon after. But absolutely brilliant. Here's a little bit of what Lee and I shot. Some of it's his footage, some of it's mine.
He's out of somewhere there's never been.
I've got two, not complaints, but two kind of, you know, if I'm doing a plus and minus column, I think two in the minus column for the ISC performance. One, it was just the duo, whereas some of their gigs, probably like their bigger gigs in Europe and probably Germany especially, it's like a full band where they've got a guitarist, they've got the female singer. So with him just being the core duo, then they're having to rely on a lot of, you know, sort of backing tracks and pre-recorded stuff, and that's fine, you know, I get that. It would have been nice to see, you know, at least the female singer there, but she appeared in like video clip form and, you know, pre-recorded form, but even so, still a brilliant performance. And the other in the minus column is just selfishly, I would have liked them to be on for longer. I think I could have certainly done with, you know, at least a couple more songs from them, but A, they probably had the longest set of the night, even though they weren't the main act, and B, they played, you know, pretty much everything I was familiar with or that I was a really big fan of. You know, there were some of my favourites being performed. It was amazing. Lee, he kind of came with me and agreed to meet me more as like a favour to me, really. I was thinking about doing this on my own, and I think I would have been alright being there on my own. Travelling down, I had to do that on my own because Lee was coming from Kent. That would have been the same anyway. And then there seemed to be a lot of people who seemed to be by themselves at the venue, but they were having such a good time. There was a lady of like Far Eastern extraction who was in front of me and Lee, and she was just dancing wildly, and she had kind of no concern about sort of where she was in the moment when ISC were on, but she was just dancing and shaking her long hair back constantly, and sometimes she'd be so close to me and Lee, like her hair would go in our face, and later on when we could hear herself speak, I said to Liz, oh, that dancing lady in front of us, her hair smelt nice, didn't it? The crowd, it was exactly the sort of crowd I'd expect, like everyone in black, apart from Leroy, who had a white shirt on, so at least it was easy to spot in amongst everyone. But, you know, the kind of mixture of gothic, you know, heavily made up all dressed in black and, you know, leathers and lots of eyeliner and things like that, you know, that real sort of gothic look. So after ISC had finished, we went and looked for somewhere to eat because it was after 10 o'clock at this point and neither of us had eaten since lunchtime. And then we just decided upon this Turkish restaurant called Istanbul that was literally, again, across the street, and it's next door to the Great Portland Street tube station. Now, I've never done the tube before. I would never do it on my own. I think if I was with someone who knew the tube system and everything, I would probably brave it. But for me, it's like sort of, you know, taxis and things all the way for me. But even that's so close to everything, the hotel, the venue, pubs, restaurants, shops, etc. You know, it's just all sort of there where you need it, really. There's no hunting out or walking for ages trying to find something. It's just all right there, and I love that. That just took out so much potential stress for me. But we went in this nice Turkish restaurant called Istanbul, and had a decent, if a little bit pricey meal, but it's London prices. The drinks were expensive, you know, and getting on for double what I'd expect the prices to normally be where I live, certainly. And the food's not much cheaper either. But it was a good meal. It was nice just to sit down and have a quiet conversation and something to eat, because we're both ready. I won't bore you with what we had to eat, but if Leroy wants to make any mention of it in the comments, then he can do, of course. And then at that point it was, I think, getting on for about 20 to 11. So we were just like, well, shall we go and catch the end of Curlion Camera? And then there was an after party beginning at 11 in like a room next door to the main performance area at the 229. So we thought we'd stay for a bit of the after party as well. So we got back to 229 right after having dinner. I'd sat down and had a drink, and Lee, he went up for a bit of a closer look. Curlion Camera, I'd listened to a bit of them since I knew I was coming to this gig, like 6 weeks ago or however long it's been since I booked my tickets and everything. And I do like them, they're good. I think I could probably get quite into them. I might take a punt on one of their albums at some point. I don't think they're as good as ISC, that's probably a lot of bias on my part. And I didn't see all of them, I saw like the last 20 minutes of Curlion Camera. So I can't say for sure how good a full set it was. But what we did hear, we heard like the last 2 or 3 songs, I think, was pretty good. But I mean, ISC, the frontman Dennis Osterman, he's got such good charisma and stage presence, so that's what I wanted to go for. I didn't really care about anything else, but it was good that I was able to see a little bit of Curlion Camera. So then we stayed for the after party, which was meant to be going on till 2 AM, but there was nothing much happening. It was in like a smaller part of the venue, in like a adjacent room. And we had another drink, although Lee had kind of had his fill of pale ale by then. So we didn't really touch it hardly. He was knackered, bless him, and I was pretty tired myself. And there wasn't much going on. You couldn't really talk because the music was loud. So we're just kind of sitting down, watching other people milling about. And, you know, some of the music being played by the DJ was really good. I did enjoy it, but we weren't really having a brilliant time at the after party. As after parties go, maybe it got better later on, but while we were there in the early throes, you know, we weren't that bothered. So after about 20 minutes or so, we just walked back to the hotel, and we had a nice chat about stuff, interesting topics, and just, you know, good conversation between good friends before bed. And that was our Friday. Brilliant night. I want to say a massive thank you to Leroy, to Lee, for coming with me and just being great company. As I say, looking back, I think I would have been alright doing this on my own. I mean, obviously, you know, like, it's nice to have a drink and a chat with someone and a meal. So that bit would have been, I would have probably just wolfed something down somewhere for dinner and, you know, kind of just sort of kept to myself in the venue for most of the night. But, you know, it's always better to do these things when you've got a friend or someone to go with. And Lee, to be fair, even though he didn't have no idea who ISC was before I asked him if he wanted to come with me on this, he listened to a few of their tracks and quite enjoyed them before the day. And then after the gig, he said, oh yeah, they were great, weren't they? I really enjoyed that. Some of those tracks are brilliant. So, you know, is maybe not as big as me, but you know, certainly a little bit of an ISC convert now, which is good news. Saturday we woke up pretty early, 8 o'clock, because my coach back was at midday, so just in case there was any delays, traffic problems or anything, I wanted to be up early and have breakfast fairly early. Just make sure I got everything out of the hotel room that I needed to. I made a cup of tea in the hotel room, had a quick shower, went down for breakfast. Beautiful breakfast, probably the best hotel breakfast I've had in memory. And I've been to the Premier Inn in Brentford in August, and that was an excellent one, but this one was better, I think. So Holiday Inn, their food is, or at least their breakfast is decent. It's that kind of, you know, buffet style, apart from the hot items that someone's serving to you, but you can still have as much as what you want. You just say, you know, give me more, and they'll give me more. Don't mention the bacon. I kind of went through the old eyes bigger than the belly syndrome regarding bacon for breakfast, and I'm ashamed to say I had to leave a couple of rashers, but if you knew how much I'd eaten anyway, then you'd be like, well, yeah, I'm not surprised you left some. And I also had sausage, fried eggs, beans, toast, a cappuccino, a cup of tea, and an orange juice, all during breakfast. Unlimited drinks. You know, you could have whatever you want, as much of it as what you wanted. And it was all really good quality, really nice. So Lee very kindly said that he'd give me a lift to Victoria. I was more than happy to book an Uber, because driving through London can be pretty sort of stressful at the best of times. And Lee, you know, although he is familiar with London to an extent, you know, he's not someone who drives through it regularly. You know, that's an occasional thing for him. So it was, I think, very brave of him to drive to the hotel the previous day and then drive me through, you know, the centre of London, the city of Westminster, whatever you'd call it, to Victoria Station the following morning. So many thanks again for that, mate. So got to Victoria Station, said goodbye to Lee just before 11 o'clock. So I had about an hour to kill before the coach, which was fine because I wanted another drink. All that bacon had made me have a raging thirst. So I got a cup of tea, and then later on I then got a bottle of orange juice from Starbucks and a bottle of water as well to take on the coach. And then the coach left pretty much on time, barely anyone on it, because there was two of the coaches. Our coach number was 560, but anyone who was going directly to Sheffield, because that's where the last stop was after Chesterfield, they could just get on the other coach, and that would just avoid Golders Green, Chesterfield, etc., and just go direct to Sheffield, so that would get people in Sheffield back quicker. There was probably more on that one than on ours, because ours was just for like the ones who were either catching it at the next stop, Golders Green, after Victoria, and then everyone who was leaving, you know, at Chesterfield, really. Got back more or less on time, maybe even a little bit earlier than expected, about 3:25, and yeah, that was it really. So that was my ISC In Strict Confidence concert experience, and also my London experience. I am so pleased that it was a pretty much stress-free experience. Yeah, you always get the usual sort of discomforts during coach travel, and then when you get into an unfamiliar place, it's like, oh, I hope I'm going to go the right way. You know, there's all those sort of minor sort of anxieties and stuff, but having done this, you know, done all that travelling by myself to London, and I did, you know, I swore that I would never go to London on my own. A matter of months ago, I was still saying that. And I think, you know, these trips that I've had this year, where I've managed to get out to places like Harrogate and Wembley Stadium / Brentford, albeit I've travelled with people, with friends like Lee, Jason, Dan. This one was a really big deal for me. So for my own kind of personal growth, for want of a better term, the fact that I was able to go all that way to London, everything unfamiliar, the coach station, the hotel, the venue, blah blah blah, without blowing my own horn too much, you know, it feels like quite an achievement really for someone with my difficulties regarding mental health and my autism condition as well. I think if it had been a similar kind of thing to Wembley in August, where there was a lot more sort of having to book Ubers and travelling around sort of the outskirts and, you know, different parts of London, I wouldn't have liked to do that on my own, but everything was just close by. So it was just a fantastic experience, a really great gig. Is it up there with my favourite gigs of all time? Probably. Like I say, I wish it had gone a bit longer, but you know, they weren't even the main act in Strict Confidence. But just for the whole experience, and being able to hang out with Lee as well, who's great company. You know, we had some great chats and laughs and conversations, as I knew we would. So again, I want to say a massive, massive thanks to him. Lee and I have planned another gig in the new year. It's one we've actually booked the tickets and everything for a couple of weeks ago, before we even did In Strict Confidence at 229 Great Portland Street. But this one is, for both of us, one of our all-time favourite acts. Certainly been in my top 10, top 5 even, for most of my life. And they're doing a UK tour next June, and we've got tickets, good tickets as well, near the front to see them at the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham. That's all I'll say on the matter. There might be one or two of you who might be able to fathom who I'm referring to, but I'm sure I'll be doing a video about our experiences in June. You know, and if there's anything that crops up between now and then obviously I'll look into it, you know, money pending, etc. But as far as I know, that's going to be the next gig, and that's not till, I think, June the 4th, so it's quite some time away. But Nottingham, of course, is very close to me. Lee will no doubt decide how he's going to be travelling up to Nottingham for that nearer the time. He might want to drive, as he don't mind some long distance driving, but he will be driving on his own obviously for that, so he might decide to use public transport, I don't know. Anyway, that's for June anyway, so stay tuned for that in, what, 7 months nearly. But I want to say thank you all for watching this. Thank you for sticking with what's probably been quite a long video with me just sat here talking about In Strict Confidence at the 229 venue in London. If I can see ISC in concert again, maybe they do London or somewhere in the UK once a year, who knows, I'm not entirely sure, but I'll certainly be looking out, and if they do come back to the UK at all, I would love to see them again, and maybe it might even be with the fuller band next time. But it was still a blinder of a gig, even with just the duo. Special thanks go, as always, to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm not going to bang on about all the description text box stuff, because I know I've taken up enough of your time already, other than just to remind you to give Leroy Screwballs channel a click and a subscribe at the very top there. But I'm going to go now, and I do hope that all of you will join me again next time for my next sit down chat, sort of like a vlog, but not really. This kind of video where I talk about a gig or something I've been to. Join me for it, the next one, and I'll see you all then, and also for my next video as well, which will be along on the channel in a couple of days time. Cheers everyone. See ya.